Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Junior Doan, and welcome to Uncommon Sense. My guest today is Joe Vanderkellen, the president and owner of SMI Snowmakers, a global supplier of snow machines and snowmaking equipment, which is located right here in Midland, Michigan. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Now, maybe the name is obvious, but what does Snowmakers actually do?
Yeah, we provide snowmaking equipment and services primarily for ski resorts around the world.
And how did you get in the business? Because I remember your mom and dad. I mean, there must be some story there.
Yeah, of course. We grew up down the street, and my father and mother actually started the company over 40 years ago. And I'm very proud to be a second generation person involved with the business. And my father was a patent attorney by training. And one of our neighbors in Midland was a gentleman by the name of Alden Hansen.
Yeah.
And he was a very creative, ingenious person, and he came up with some ideas for a new type of ski boot. And it involved a new type of material that was very flexible, but in cold temperatures it was still pliable. And he asked my father for some legal advice, and that's how he became involved with the ski boot company. And then to extend that on to snowmaking, Mr. Hansen was also involved in some snowmaking development and snowmaking ideas. And my father was also involved from a legal standpoint with the snowmaking ideas as well. So both of those became business involvements for our family in the early 1970s.
Was your father a freestanding patent attorney?
Yeah, he was working at Dow Chemical.
Oh, he was working at Dow.
Yeah, he was working at Dow Chemical, and he finished working at Dow in the early 70s.
And did your mother have a role in this? I remember, but I don't know the details.
Yeah, sure. My mother was, one of the founding people as well, and she was always strong financially, and so she was in charge of the accounting and the bookkeeping and all the financials, along with working with the bank on a regular basis to make sure there was enough cash flow to make it all work, and there was enough funding to pay the suppliers and the employees and make it all pull together. She was kind of the glue of the financial side of it.
So this is really a family business.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yep. And I kind of grew up, loading trailers and sweeping the floors and putting together equipment, I was in high school and have very fond memories of that stage of my life.
Now, were those considered chores or help out or paid?
I think all of the above. I know there were times when it was just, hey, we need some help. We got to get this equipment out by Monday. You're going to pull your share of work, and I was always happy to help out. I know later on in my later high school years, I would get paid for a lot of that work when the company could support that.
What did it teach you, that kind of work?
Oh, I think it teaches you the value of showing up on time, completing a job. I remember one of the first projects I worked on, it involved getting a lot of tools out and putting some equipment together, and I reluctantly didn't put my tools back. So I was taken by one of the key people in the company and shown that, Joe, your job's really not finished until you put the tools away and you clean up your work area. And that was a great lesson to learn at 16 or 17 years old to, make sure that you understand what a completed task really is, because I was all happy with myself for accomplishing putting this piece of equipment together, but I didn't clean up my work area afterwards and make sure it was tidy. So that was a good life lesson for me at a young age.
And that's a lesson you really can't learn on your own. So it's really a gift he gave you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of those life lessons that very happy to learn that at a young age.
And did you intend to go in the business when you went to school?
Not really. I had always been interested in how things worked. When we'd go over the Mackinac Bridge, for example, I'd wonder why the cables were there and why the big pieces of concrete were in the end, how skyscraper buildings were anchored to the ground. So I was always curious about how things work. So for me, an engineering degree made sense.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was interested in more mechanical, so I got my degree in mechanical engineering. And at the time, I was working part-time for IBM and was interested in computers and selling back in the early 80s. So there was no plan to come back and be involved in the business. My father encouraged me to go spread my wings and do some other, learn from other people and learn other businesses.
And?
And then one summer up at our cottage, we had some discussions about how the snowmaking company was growing, and there was some opportunities there. And over a bottle of wine and a few discussions, it was brought up that, hey, what if you came back and joined the snowmaking company? And I had been freshly married at that time. My wife was an accountant. She had a job in Lansing as well. And so it involved a relocation. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about that and decided for us at that time in our life, it would be a good time to come back to Midland. I was like growing up in Midland. I think it's a great community. So it just seemed to be the right fit, and the timing was right. So we came back to Midland and brought my wife with me, and she found a different accounting job in Saginaw. And we're very thrilled to have moved back here and raise our family as well in this community.
So you grew up with a working mother, so to speak, in the family with a husband who respected her and needed her. I don't say needed, but anyway, she was an integral part of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. She's remains an integral part of the company, even today as an advisor for myself. And unfortunately, my father passed away at a fairly young age, so I became president of the company in 1991 when I was 28 years old.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be a difficult time during the transition. But my mother was a key advisor and a key partner throughout all that. And we became even closer than we had when we were growing up.
If you have a difference in the work area, how do you wall that off from private relationships, like mom, son, or family?
Yeah, that's a good question. At work, I was called my father Jim, my mother Betty, but at home it was mother and father, or mom and dad. So we were able to separate that, and business and family somewhat went together at the dinner table sometimes.
Yeah,
and,
really.
But there were times when it was personal, and there were times when it was business. So I think we did a good job sorting through that and balancing that out.
Boy, at 28, taking over a company and having to build it, how did you approach that daunting task?
Well, fortunately, I had a couple years traveling around the world together with my father, and one of his first lessons was, son, I want you to learn how I do things and show you the way that I create business and I run this company, but I want you to develop your own style, but please watch and listen and learn and participate in these meetings together. And so that was a good lesson I learned from him, and how he created new opportunities around the world, and how he worked with people and was a very good listener. And then I developed my own style over time. So fortunately, we had a couple years overlap together, and I was able to meet a lot of our key customers, a lot of our key representatives, a lot of our key suppliers, and of course, working with the team in Midland that we had.
How did he create business abroad? Or here, well, really abroad?
Yeah, well, he had a team of advisors here in Midland and in the Saginaw region, and they were bankers and Dow executives and ex-Dow executives, and I think during his career at Dow, he did quite a bit of international travel as well.
Oh.
So he was very comfortable moving around the world pretty seamlessly, and wasn't afraid to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
And so, to half the game in business is just showing up. And even with today's technology and internet and cell phones, it's still important to make that, I think, human touch on it. And so, he was very active at traveling around the world and meeting people and understanding their situations, and then trying to develop solutions to solve their problems together with them.
What you observed, or what you've lived, how much do you have to sort of change your approach depending on what culture you're in?
Yeah, clearly as you move around the world, you have language issues, you have cultural issues, you have currency issues, you have work ethic issues, and you really need to work in that local environment. So, you got to sort of think globally but act locally.
How do you train yourself to do that?
Well, we've we've tried to find good local partners. So in Japan, we work with a Japanese company that we partner with, and they of course speak the language and know the customs, and I'll go work together with them, but they'll organize the schedule, they'll do the translation, they help us organize our technology into those countries. Russia would be another example where we look hard. One of my jobs is to create these new market opportunities and find these key people that we can partner with locally, and that we have this unique technology in Midland, Michigan that applies around the world. But we really need that local touch. We need the local language. We need the local contracts, understand the rules electrically, understand the legal rules that go with doing business in that country. So finding local partners has been a big part of our strategy.
And how do you sift out the crooks? How do you make good decisions about who the local partners should be?
Yeah, I mean, you try to work with your contacts in the industry. You try to sit and interview people. You try to create situations where you might find out more about their deeper values. And
like what would be an example of that?
Well, honesty is a big issue with me. Respect and responsibility. Are they respectful at dinner to the hostess, the waiters, the waitresses, those kind of things? I look for those little touches in people to try to understand, and when things get hard, which in business they almost always do, how are you going to get through those rough seas? How are you going to work together to solve those problems? And a big part of leading a company and leading a business is finding the right people and organizing them in the right seats on the bus. And so, finding these local partners, finding key management people in our company, it's a never-ending battle. It's an ongoing process. It's dynamic. So just work hard to try to sift through and find good, solid, hardworking people.
With your experience now, when you say there are always problems in business, do they sort of fall into sort of type of problems that you, I don't want to say anticipate, but have been familiar with having had them before?
Sure, there's no sort of MBA handbook for, a lot of what happens in business, but you will see some common issues with people. We'll have some product issues where we might have a warranty problem with a customer. We might have some collections problems on some of the money that's owed. So you will see common themes, but each one needs to be handled gently and appropriately with a separate strategy. So you try to listen to the situation, you try to understand, and hopefully you work through these problems together with your customers, your employees, your representatives, whatever they might be. And if the situation gets really hard, then sometimes the best decision you can make is to end that relationship. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes in business too.
Because people are people before they're business people,
exactly,
right? Yes.
Exactly.
So how do you avoid, or how do you deal with people who want to copy your machines and go into competition against you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're always trying to advance our technology. So as long as we can keep coming up with a machine that makes snow at higher temperatures, that makes snow more efficiently, that takes advantage of a new process that might be available, we are trying to stay ahead of imitators in that way. We've found that there's always going to be customers that are going to compete only on price. They're going to buy the lowest price product no matter what. We try to offer also equipment for that full range, from the most sophisticated product you can have to the simplest one, but sometimes on the very simple scale, it's difficult to compete on that, particularly with Chinese manufacturing or in some of the markets that we're in, where it is easier and less expensive for them to take apart and re-engineer our simpler products.
Interesting. Now, you've had a long association with the Winter Olympics in various countries. How did that come about?
Well, back in the 1980s, we were one of the few companies in the world in snowmaking. So I believe our first Olympic experience was with Sarajevo in 1984. And we were one of the leaders in Europe in snowmaking, so that was a natural fit. And then over time, as global warming's happened, as the investment in ski resorts and mountain resorts around the world has really, really strengthened between the base facilities, the new detachable high-speed lifts, the real estate developments, the hotels. snow has become a huge part of the success of that. So snowmaking went from a very niche, small, global business to a fairly significant one, at least in the mountain resort industry. And so, we have been fortunate enough to have good contacts for the Olympic venues over time. And
Right. You earn their respect.
We've gotten known over time to deliver a very quality product, a very creative product at a great value, and then followed up with great service and support. So our Olympic legacy, we're certainly very proud of that, and we hope it continues. And just today I was working on where there's a new project in Korea for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics that we're helping with the new downhill speed event alpine venue that's being built. It's a very big, a very mean, a very steep mountain that requires a lot of technical capabilities, and we're one of the few companies that can provide the people and the flexibility to work through these difficult
So what is
mountain
the process?
environments.
Do you put in a bid, or do they invite you to bid along with a few other companies, or are you so good now they just say, well, we've only got to talk to you because your experience is so vast and deep, although that looks like collusion.
Sure, we're certainly one of the big players globally, and we have a great reputation with that. But each situation's a little different. Some of the resorts might already be built and already have some snowmaking equipment. Other resorts might be brand new, like Sochi was a brand new resort from a white sheet of paper in the forest. 2 of the 3 snow venues for Korea are already built, so they didn't have a men's and women's downhill that qualified to an Olympic standard. So that's a new mountain being built from scratch as well. So generally on the new resorts, we're actively involved throughout the design and bidding process, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get it at the end. So it's a lot of work to organize and to come up with these creative solutions, do the engineering behind it, and then back it up with a good technical proposal with an aggressive price and the support.
But they give you some money towards the workup expenses?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Oh.
So it just varies by customer and by country.
So you're away a lot of the time.
Yeah, I spend probably a third of my time traveling, and I probably do 8 international trips a year, along with a lot of trips across North America. And I think that's part of my leadership style, is to go out, and because we're a global company, we need to touch the different markets, understand what's happening. But it's also good to stay in touch with our competitors and to, be a bit more reactive, maybe. And so I kind of grew up traveling with our family, and I enjoy traveling, and my family will sometimes travel with me. So it's just a part of my leadership style, if you will. And because we're a global company, I think it's important to go out there and visit people and understand what's going on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. Visibility is reality. But sometimes I ask myself, that may be good for the company. What about the marriage? Do you do this by phone calls? Sometimes she comes, sometimes she doesn't. What about the kids? What, if it's not too personal, what have you worked out that really works well?
Sure. Well, in a couple of months, we'll be celebrating our 30th year of marriage together.
Congratulations.
And so, thank you. I'm quite proud of that. And, my wife has been very supportive of growing the business, building the business, and has worked hard at a relationship with us and with myself and our kids and her friends. So I think she's been very supportive of me being away. And, I always leave my watch on the home time zone, so I remember to call home. I try to call home every day, whether it used to be by telephone, now it can be by Skype or by iPhone chat. So more videos involved today, and that's nice. And I've been able to do homework with my children via Skype and video conferencing now. And so I do try to stay connected to them, even though I'm really engaged with traveling and working 15, 16-hour days when I'm gone. But it's important to stay in touch with my home life and my family, and it gives me strength to know that I'm connected with them, and that link is still there. So, sometimes I used to think I would call home for them, but it's really, in a lot of ways, more for me. And so we've worked that relationship together where it's been supportive, and my wife typically will travel with me twice a year, whether it's to a trade show or a convention or just on a customer visit trip. And she sees the pace that we work at, and she gets to know these customers personally. And then she really gets a link with, hey, I need to go in Saturday, and I really need to take care of our Japanese colleagues. And she'll go, oh yeah, really like those guys. Go get them. And it'll encourage me to go do that instead of, geez, you're going to be gone again. So
Yes.
she's been very supportive and encouraging over the
Those are
years.
important.
But it's also, I think, been smart to keep her included in what's
Yes.
happening and keep her involved and keep her connected to the company and what happens. So
Now you raised how many children?
we have three
Three.
kids.
That's sort of what I remembered. Did you do it similarly to your dad and mother's raising you, in terms of the business? Help out,
Yeah, no, the company's bigger now.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little different chapter in the history of it. But they've certainly been at ski resorts with me when I'm looking at the lift maze loading, how many seats are in the restaurant, why aren't there more bathrooms, those kind of discussions, because I know so much about ski resort and ski resort design. So when we ski together, they'll hear a lot about it. And of course, at the dinner table, they'll hear me talking about work, ask me about my day, and I'll tell them about what's happening. And they've fortunately been able to meet a lot of our representative customers that will come to Midland.
Really?
I try to encourage them to meet the people from different countries that are speaking different languages, and they enjoy meeting my children as well. So I think it's been nice exposure for them to, over the years, be introduced to these people and get to understand a little bit more about the world.
So that's the people coming to Midland. Are they mostly from governments who have a contract with you, or for private, like ski resorts?
Yeah, there are some publicly or government-owned resorts.
Right.
Not that many. They're mainly private resorts owned by private individuals
perk to come here.
or publicly traded companies or whatever it might be. But we enjoy having customers here, and we have literally hundreds of people come through every year, whether they're sales reps or customers, and do training and check us out. And so we encourage our customers to come and visit us.
So, but with being away a third of the year, a third of 2,000 hours, that's a lot of time to be away. How do you keep yourself in, I don't want to say in shape, but physically well and physically enthusiastic?
Sure, that's a good question as well. I view it as about 120 days a year that I'm gone. And, fortunately at a young age I was exposed to fitness and trying to stay in shape, and played football and basketball, and I still have a huge passion for basketball. So, fortunately I was taught how to work out and how to stretch and how to lift and do those things. So it is harder to find gyms and fitness rooms in Europe and Asia, but in North America it's very common now. So I'll just try to schedule in, whether it's just a walk or it's working out on a treadmill or elliptical, lifting weights, whatever it might be. But I try to spend at least 30 minutes a day stretching, walking, and some form of exercise. I think it helps you mentally along with physically. Mm-hmm. And so it's an ongoing battle as you travel with different foods around the world. And some foods I really enjoy, and some foods are a bit more challenging for the system, if you will. But I always enjoy the local customs and the local food. But it can be a challenge to stay fit. Fortunately, working in the mountain resort business, we're out in the field a lot when I'm traveling.
Right.
So I can be hiking up and down ski hills and sort of working out while I'm working, if you will. And
Yes.
that's like a double bonus. If I can be outside in the mountains in the fresh air, particularly if you just got off a 12-hour plane ride,
That's
that
amazing.
fresh
You
air
could.
and fitness is a fantastic relief for you, and just energizes you and gives you positive energy.
Did you ever mess up or have a goof up or two that really taught you something that you'd be willing to share?
Sure. I mean, I make mistakes every month, and I'll give you an example. Just this week, we were working on a project in northern Vermont, and it's a retrofit project, which are harder than new projects.
Yes.
So you have an existing system and you're trying to improve it and make it better. And I missed the size of an electrical disconnect. I thought it was a 300 amp electrical service, and it was really only a 200 amp. And so we've already consummated the contract, and an electrician called me just yesterday and said, hey, I think we got a problem with this. What do you think? And I immediately admitted that I had missed that. I'd made a mistake, and we'll work with the customer to sort that out. And if we can't, then we'll eat that. And so acknowledge my mistake, pay for it, and move on to the next thing. So It's very common to make mistakes, and I make them all the time, and we just try to fix them quickly and correctly and to the customer's satisfaction, and just keep working through them.
Would you say one word about corruption abroad?
I don't see it. I just do not see it.
Let's stop right there.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe. We've learned a great deal from Joe. Firstly, be lucky with the family you're born into, right, that took your responsibilities as the business responsibilities as family responsibilities. I was really impressed about what his father told him. Learn from me, but don't be limited by me. Find your own way of doing things. I also particularly liked that he went out into the world, and his father was glad about that, I'm sure, but offered him these opportunities, and he really took the time to think it over. And unfortunately, tragedy hit his family very early. 28 is really young to take over things. However, he had enough of a background. What I also really liked is that he treasures his wife, and he treasures the people he works with. He understands the dynamic of being with people, whether they're your partners or your employees or your family. And I was also really impressed that when they worked together with mom and pop and so forth, that at work they were by their first names, at home they were mom and dad. Always a good thing to keep your, as they say, roles or relationships clean and clear. The other thing I would really like to say about him is his sense of goodwill towards people. This is something you can bring to your own life. It doesn't matter where you are, and also to learn from your competitors, and also to make yourself present and acknowledge mistakes and clean them up. Always to the better to do that. And the most important thing is that he's really good to himself. He knows he has to keep up his body. He needs to, for his own, keep up his relationships, and generally live life multidimensionally. So as you go out this week, until I see you next time, do the same in your own life.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadone.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadone.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.